One of the things that always surprised me about the comparison between Nicki Minaj and Cardi B is the fact that they have a similar background and one is considered black whilst the other one isn't. Both the islands that they hail from are only 2 hours away from each other. The only thing is, Cardi B has always said that she identifies as Latina. Later on in her career, did she identify as Afro-Latina, but in the beginning, she definitely identified as Hispanic. And when she first got with her husband Offset, who was black, she said that she was in an interracial relationship, meaning that she does not consider herself black. Whilst Nicki, she has always considered herself black. She's never really, at least in the beginning of her career, identified with any of her admixture. And one of the things that I always noticed is that people say that Cardi B isn't black because the fact that she's Hispanic and the fact that she says like a lot of racist things. People have compared her to like Erica Mena, who also identifies as Afro-Latina as of recently, and has also been accused of saying some colorist things. But the part that I find different between the two is that Cardi B is American. She was born here in America, and she was raised in Black and Latin culture since birth, unlike Nicki Minaj, who came to America a few years later on in her childhood. But she's always identified as black, even on like her public legal documents, like her mugshot and stuff like that. And she's identified as black in her interviews as well, and just really repped being from Queens, New York City. She never really repped being from an island or being an island girl and stuff like that. Later on in her career, she does start to embrace her multiracial background when she says things like Trinidadian, Japanese, Indian. Later on, she does start to identify with that more and actually let people know, hey, this is my actual background. She's always been pretty open about being from Trinidad, but she's never necessarily claimed it as her background. She's always identified as black. So I think that's why outside of her country not being Spanish speaking, like she gets a pass and Cardi B does not. Which I always found kind of weird because most of the time when people are trying to say who's black and who isn't, it has to do with the phenotype and it has to do with the admixture, which is so funny because both of their islands have a lot of different blending when it comes to race, and the admixture is very similar. But when it comes to phenotype, I personally believe that Cardi B has more of a light-skinned black female passing face than Nicki Minaj. Just to compare their features, Cardi B is more of like a wider, thicker nose, whereas Nicki Minaj's nose really does look Indian. You can tell she's West Indian. And with Cardi B's hair, it's definitely a lot more thicker, a lot more coarser, a lot more fuller. It looks like if a black girl got a blowout. But when you look at Nicki Minaj's hair, it's very thin, it's very flat, it's very it's not very thick at all. She has very, very bone straight, long, thin hair. Even when it's wet, it's very, very bone straight. It doesn't have any curl whatsoever. So I always thought it was funny how one person who has more of a black phenotype is considered not black, and she's blackfishing and blah, 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 blah. But Nicki Minaj, who to me, genuinely, even though she does pass like a light-skinned black girl, she's clearly exotic. She's clearly an exotical. And to me, she clearly looks Indian. I have like this Indian girl that I follow who looks just like Nicki Minaj with no makeup. I'll see if I can find like a picture of her. But she looks very Indian to me. So I find it funny that one person gets a pass and the other person doesn't. And I think it's funny how when black people try to pick and choose and cherry pick who's allowed to enter and who's allowed not to enter. And then they say, oh, it's based off if you have a black mom or not. Well, that's not true because Cardi B and Nicki Minaj's mothers are both from Trinidad. So why is one considered black and the other one isn't? It's just hypocritical, and it goes to show that if the black community finds you usable or finds you as a positive representation of themselves, they will claim you. But the moment you do something and the moment you say something that they think is, not a good representation of them, they will turn on you, call you anti-black, call you colorist, call you futurist, call you a culture vulture, call you a blackfisher, and all these other things. So I always found it really interesting, and it's something that I always wanted to talk about, but let me know your opinions. Moral of the story is, if someone is multiracial, biracial, or maybe even multi-ethnic, I think you should respect that and stop compartmentalizing people based off of some imaginary representation you think they should uphold, and then demonizing them when they choose to embrace their own culture. And both these women have gone out their way, especially later on in their careers, to identify with their culture. And I've heard people calling Cardi B like a dirty Mexican and purposely getting her mixed up with other Hispanic people just to like discredit her background and stuff like that, and say she shouldn't say the N-word and stuff like that. And I think that's another topic for another day. But I think it's hypocritical to make her, a black queen and have her at BET. And then the moment she says nigga or calls someone a monkey, it's like, oh, you're racist, you're da 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 da. When you gave this person an invite anyway, you allowed this person to be a representation and got mad when they wanted to represent themselves and their own people. So I think black people need to do better and need to wake up and learn how to allow people to be themselves and for you to be yourself. And I think that this is probably I feel like in real life, when I have these conversations, black people, especially like black men, they have a hard time like accepting it. Like if I were to go to like a room full of black people and say, hey, Barack Obama's not black, he's half Jewish and half African, stop forcing him to be a representation when, he's his own person. People will look at me like I was crazy. So I think that sometimes black people, once we like identify with you, it's kind of hard for us to see you as something else. In the moment that you try to embrace your other like multiracial ethnic background, they'll call you a racist, colorist, and all these other things, kind of like how they did Raven Simone when she wanted to, identify her in her own type of way. But once she's light skinned with like grayish, greenish eyes, right? So once they identify you as black and you try to say, hey, like this is who I am, they will shun you or just completely ignore it, like in Nicki Minaj's case. So I've always found that really interesting. And I believe that you should always embrace all of yourself, not just the parts that other people can benefit from.
I feel she does have Indian roots.
My father is half Indian, yes. My father is like the best curry chicken cooker in the world.
Okay.
So there you go. Nicki Minaj is 1/4 Indian and a Bollywood.
But you don't date Spanish guys at all?
No.
Do you have any idea why?
I guess I like first, I like dark complexion. And it seemed like every dark guy that I ever like, they're African American or Jamaican. I don't even like people I think that like is my race, just because I like to date people that are different from me. Like I like to date people that are not like me. I like their culture. I already know my culture.